NelsonJoypad.com bring you another original. It's fucking great.
The thrall bursts through the smoky poison of the dying wizard and leaps through the air towards me. My auto rifle is empty and my health is low. A quick melee attack throws the now disintegrating thrall into the air and buys me enough time to reload my weapon before the next attack. But the respite is not fated to last long, as an enemy knight fires its heavy cannon at my vestige of refuge. Bungie have always excelled at the balls to the wall, desperate gun battles that push players to the extreme limit of their skill, and their new RPG FPS, Destiny, is no exception. Destiny is one of a new kind of shooters, an always online, cooperative and competitive first person shooter with role playing elements thrown into the mix. While there was an incredible level of hype following the game's announcement and subsequent alpha and beta tests, the game itself is hard to define. My first problem with Destiny is the fact that it has to be played online. There's no offline function, and while you have the choice to play through the roughly 10 to 12 hour campaign solo, you need to connect to the Destiny servers to even get into the game. There have been numerous games that have had this same setup over the past couple of years, but now that it's branched out into a AAA first person shooter, it means that eventually, even if it's years down the line, that these servers will be turned off and no one will be able to play the game. As a gamer, the concept infuriates and disgusts me. I can still pull out an old NES, Mega Drive or Genesis, or PlayStation and play games that are over 20 years old. But this fashion of always online titles is troubling, and it means that the game that I have just forked out £50 for has an expiration date. The gameplay within Destiny is brilliantly solid. The levelling up mechanics work well, and they're set at an excellent pace, giving players the opportunity to get to grips with their newfound abilities, and it stopped me from feeling overloaded with information. The abilities that you'll unlock can be tailored to your individual playing style, which makes your initial class selection less imperative than you may have thought. There are 3 classes to choose from. The Titan is your standard tank, who's able to absorb a huge amount of damage and dish out just as much. The Hunter, who is more of a skirmisher, and the Warlock, my personal favourite, is a great mix between the two. Each class can be upgraded and equipped to either deal damage or buff your fireteam's abilities. Combat is gratifying, but can lack the more visceral impact from other shooters. There's a wide array of enemies to fight. Many of the different types of enemies fall into similar class roles throughout the races, but there's enough diversity to keep things interesting. There are guns aplenty, although sadly there are only 4 primary, 3 secondary and 2 heavy weapon types. While they do differ in damage, magazine size and various other aspects, like reload speed, stability and so on, but ultimately that's it. There are elemental effects that some weapons will have, however it doesn't make as much of a difference as I may have hoped. The campaign can be played solo or with up to 2 other players in your fire team. The missions themselves can be played on a normal difficulty, or it can be ramped up to a harder setting for better rewards. Although the missions themselves can be too short, they can be completed within around 10 to 15 minutes in some cases. The storyline has several holes, and things are poorly explained throughout, but that aside, I did find myself growing to really like Peter Dinklage's performance as your helpful AI, Ghost. The story climaxes in a rather underwhelming battle, and all of a sudden, the story is over. It seems to me like Destiny has been made more as a precursor for subsequent titles than a game in its own right. It's sad because while Bungie aren't the best crafters of a story, they have a history of making solid tales that can really evoke concern and interest for the characters. Sadly, this was another disappointing facet of Destiny. Outside of the story missions, you can freely explore Earth's old Russia, the Moon, Venus, and Mars in patrols. There are various short missions that are available, although sadly they get very repetitive very quickly, and I found that ultimately they simply didn't add any longevity to the game. There are also a couple of cutscenes in The Reef, and I have a suspicion that we'll either get DLC to fill out this area or that previously intended content was pulled, as it was the only area that I could travel to and not actually play any missions. Where Destiny starts to live up to the hype is during the strike missions. These are difficult special missions that are available and add the fanatic, desperate battles that I started this review off with. A fire team is essential for these, and while they can be completed with 2 people, as I know through a harrowing and heroic Moonstrike, they've been designed to be played with a complement of 3 people. Bungie have also alluded to raids that will supposedly ramp up the difficulty of a strike to 11 and require 6 players to team up without the use of matchmaking. However, at the time of writing the review, no raids were available. Destiny supports incredible visuals, and while they are reminiscent of the Halo franchise, they aren't too similar as to be accused of being the same. Visually, the best world is Earth. It has stunning skyboxes, amazing particle effects, and a real sense of history. Again, Destiny starts off strong, but it drops the ball as soon as I reached Venus. I felt completely underwhelmed. The obvious time, effort and passion that went into the world of old Russia, and even the moon, both available in the beta, were obvious in the meticulously crafted environments, but both Venus and Mars felt called in. This leads me to suspect that Bungie have rushed Destiny out of the door, and it probably should have suffered a delay to keep up the excellent quality that is evident in the most flaunted levels of the game. While playing online, I had a slight issue with the sound cutting out, and I had to restart my Xbox to get it back. While this was annoying, it wasn't a game breaker. However, one of my fireteam had frequent disconnections, which ruined more than one game that we were playing. This is still early days for Destiny, so these problems may be fixed in subsequent patches, but it's still irksome to have some basic gameplay issues at launch. Another big complaint is that outside of the fighting and mission gameplay, in the safe zone known as the Tower, the economy of Destiny is never really explained. There's a wide range of materials that are needed to buy certain gear, and weapons that I found I was bewildered to the point of ignorance. With that being said, I happily completed the main story and strike missions by only using loot drops, so I suppose the economy isn't the be-all and end-all. For those players that are more interested in competitive multiplayer, we have the Crucible. The Crucible is the area where you can test your mettle against other Guardians in a handful of game modes. The PvP is scaled in such a way that a low-level noob shouldn't be overpowered by a high-level veteran. However, there are some major balance issues that I encountered in my playthrough. One of the most prevalent of these issues was simultaneous killing. I lost count of the amount of times I shot and killed an enemy player at the same time he shot and killed me. It's frustrating, and I don't fully understand how it can happen on such a regular basis. I'm sure that with a few balancing patches these can be ironed out. However, at the moment the PvP feature is somewhat of a jumbled, buggy mess. All in all, Destiny is a decent game to play, but it's not without its faults. I don't think this is the start of a new generation of games, and I certainly don't think this will be the blueprint or master model for games to come. It is fun when playing with friends, and when it's called for, Bungie really do an excellent job of keeping the player under pressure. It really ramps up the adrenaline. However, with a short and incomplete story, buggy competitive multiplayer, and in my opinion, rushed environments in the later stages of the game, I feel that Bungie may have been hoisted by their own petard. Destiny is an ambitious project by a great developer, but sadly it misses its mark. The gameplay is solid and engaging, combat is satisfying, and the early levelling system is excellently paced. Unfortunately, there isn't a great deal of replayability in the game, and sadly bugs and balance issues plague the multiplayer. The always online feature automatically gives Destiny an expiry date, and sadly enforces a precedent where gamers will accept games that one day will no longer be playable due to servers being shut down. Bungie have excelled in their strike missions, and this is when Destiny is a truly thrilling experience, with utterly challenging enemies and amazing last stands.
He will turn his eyes to earth.